and Rio Speedwagon Take It on the Run, starting off our second hour here on Park Radio. Slightly topical also, because we are now turning to all things speed. Remember that time, like about 4 years ago, that we try not to mention too much anymore, the whole C word that shut us down for a good few months, and has had knock-on effects for months and years afterwards. I remember being stuck indoors during COVID and not being able to do anything that I loved, out on stage, out in the theatre, out in crowds, singing in choirs, and it was absolutely horrific. However, I have in the studio with me a young gentleman who has turned COVID to his advantage. In fact, he's turned his whole entire life around, and he is now doing some enterprising work of his own devising, but quite big guns, if I may say so. Morning, Louis. Welcome to Park Radio.
Morning. How's it going? Thank you very much for having me.
That's great to have you here at the studio. Louis Hedge, now, you're a local guy, aren't you?
I am indeed.
Educated at all the local schools. Run us by your past, because I think there'll be some young people at home, maybe who've just finished exams and stuff, who don't realise how much within their grasp achieving their dreams might actually be. So let's start at the beginning. Where were you educated?
Yeah,
here?
Absolutely. My name's Louis. I'm 18 years old. I'm from Banham, so just down the road from here. I went to their village primary school, and then did high school and sixth form over at Wyndham High. And I've just finished my first year of university at Derby. And you're obviously mentioning lockdown. That's, like you said, it was an opportunity to turn things around, turn a negative situation into something positive, and sort of go out there and
look for your dreams.
Yeah, very much so.
So we're going to be talking about something which is not as familiar to me as it is to many people. I sit in a car and I drive in a car, and it gets me from one place to the other. However, you've got a super interest in cars, and in particular motorsport racing. Has that always been the case for you?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it was something that I always loved when I was younger, playing, toy cars at my house, idolising the Disney Pixar film cars. And one of my earliest memories was watching Formula One on the telly at my grandparents' house, and being taken up to Snetterton as a child, obviously just down the road from here.
Wonderful. So you've known about all the top racing drivers and all the main races and all of basically the whole sport ever since you were barely able to stand upon your own 2 feet.
Yeah, and it was 2013 I went to my first race, and from then on it was like, I want to be part of this. And I think it was just... I needed to be part of it, and I was a fan, like just a sort of a fan watching it from the outside for such a long time, wondering how do I get on the other side of the fence and being part of that.
Okay. So now explain to us how lockdown had that effect. This was the time where your dreams that you'd had in your mind ever since you were an ickle person, you actually managed to turn this whole thing around. Well, people shut you indoors and you went, okay, you're going to shut me indoors, I'm still going to do what I want. How did it happen?
Yeah.
What did you achieve?
Yeah, very much so. I think it got to a point, it got to 2020, and obviously the whole world shut down and we were sat at home, and the weather was actually really nice, wasn't it? It was weird. The one time we couldn't go out, it was lovely.
So you would have been 14-ish?
About that. So I was in year 10 of high school, if whatever age I was then, about 14, 15. And like I said, I've been a fan of motorsport my whole life, and it was kind of a realisation that this wasn't going to be given to me on a plate. No one was going to come to me and be like, oh, Louis, you're a good lad, you love the sport, here's a job, here's the rest of your life mapped out. So for anyone that knows, the sport, motorsport's very expensive as well as dangerous. It's costs a lot of money to compete as a driver. So that kind of route gets shut off quite quickly if you're not in sort of come from money or in the right opportunities. And I kind of fell in love with the journalism side of it, the commentary side of it, and interviewing. So it got to what I believe was the third lockdown at the start of 2021, where it was quite cold and snowy.
It sounds like it still rests inside your head in a strong memory.
It still feels quite recent. And between Christmas of 2020 and then that first lockdown in January, I sent out some emails to different people asking... all people in motorsport asking, do you want to sit on a video call with me and do a quick interview? And I sent it to people who I thought, I'm more likely to be able to speak to them just because they're in sort of lower divisions of the sport. And then I sent it to some higher people who, I didn't think it was quite as likely, but you know what? What did I have to lose? They weren't going to, the worst they could say was no.
Absolutely.
They weren't going to take away my birthday. And it's all turned out
and
really
also
nicely.
Nobody else would know anyway, would they?
No, absolutely. And it worked perfectly because no one had anything better to do. All the drivers were as locked in as we were. They couldn't go out and race. They couldn't go out and test. All their media duties were on the lowdown. So, yeah, and that's where I started Hedgeworks Motorsport, which is my YouTube channel. And it's where, like I said, I started doing video call interviews with drivers. And that was great that first year, obviously getting to interview some really amazing people via video call, doing kind of longer, more podcasty kind of things. And then in 2022, when kind of lockdown restrictions kind of had eased, because I know 2021 it was quite up and down, wasn't it?
Yeah.
For that second year, we then transitioned to interviewing at racetracks, obviously Snetterton being my local one.
That's a handy location to be living.
Very much so.
Motorsport is your passion,
and it's great. Obviously, I'm now just finished my first year of university up in Derby, and that's about half an hour from Donington Park, which is another great circuit. So it's great having those local places. But yeah, so lucky to have Snetterton so nearby.
And that presumably that must have fueled your passion for motorsport a bit. It was so accessible; you could go out and get obsessed with it quite easily.
Yeah, definitely. And it was like, to start with, it was a great day out. It was a family friend who introduced me to the British Touring Cars, which is the main kind of series I cover. It's the biggest category in the UK. It was him who introduced that. Him and his wife were coming to visit us that weekend, and it just so happens that same weekend there was touring car racing at Snetterton.
Right.
So he was like, "Oh, go to that. Do you want to come along?" And stumbled across it. And
fantastic. Yeah, so was it in your family, or was it through this friend that it actually happened?
Not massively. I mean, my grandparents always sort of had an interest, but more so the bike side of it. But not massively. Both my parents are more sort of musical entertainment industry.
Okay.
So quite different. But there are quite a few links actually I've noticed between the two industries.
Yep.
Quite weirdly. But yeah, not particularly actually. No.
Okay, so that was your first thing. So Louis, who did you get replies from that you weren't expecting to hear back from? Come on, you're allowed to name drop.
Well,
the Waveney Valley is your audience.
I guess the initial one, and he's become a real sort of helper and sort of almost mentor of mine now, is Paul O'Neill, who he used to race in the British Touring Cars. He's won a couple of races, but I guess he's best known now. He's part of their ITV commentary, interviewing punditry team, and he's also brother of Melanie C from the Spice Girls. But I emailed him as one of the early ones, as he's always been someone I'd looked up to, and I thought he was he got it great, racing driver and interview. He had the best of both worlds. So I sent an email out to him, and I've interviewed him a fair few times now, and he's always brilliant. So him and a fair few other British touring car drivers, and it was really special actually going from people when I was younger, like looking up to them, having their posters on my bedroom wall, to then having that opportunity to interview them and ask them things and discuss all the goings on with their career.
Awesome. So what kind of tips has he given you that have helped you to progress yourself?
Always ask for help, which I think is very much an important one. And I think, this is how it's all come about, like sort of ask for it and just go for it and put yourself out there and take any opportunity you can, and it's often not what you know, it's who you know. So motorsport, there's so many great people, there's so many lovely people to talk to, so just make the most of that, I suppose. So you've called your YouTube channel Hedgeworks Motorsports. I'm going to just keep mentioning that so people are interested in going to listen to it, but give us a flavour of what your interview might consist of. What kind of questions do you ask these people? What interests you? What do you think your audience is interested in hearing about from them? Well, first and foremost, when I'm at a circuit, all I'm looking for is stories. That's the bottom line. I think, like I said, initially when I first started out, it was more podcasty, radio-y kind of things with drivers because they had more time, kind of half an hour career-based looking back. So if there was a driver that I'd interviewed that you're particularly interested in and wanted to hear how they start, or what they're planning on doing next, those kind of ones. But then at the circuit, it's very topical on what's going on that day. So if there's been a particular challenge with setting up a car, it'll be sort of about that. If a driver is just coming off a really good result or a win, we'll be talking about that. So it's always looking for stories, which I love, whether that's challenges of the circuit, whether that's something they're finding difficult, or like I said, driver wins. Or even more frustrations, which can be a real interesting one, because it's an interesting dynamic interviewing someone straight after a race, whether they've just had the best race of their life or they've had a complete nightmare and just want to go home. It's an interesting dynamic, that's for sure.
In which case, they probably don't want to have your microphone thrust in.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Face.
Very short answers, yes and no, yes and no.
I remember that so well from like news broadcasts and after matches, and you see the interviewer going, so how do you feel? And this person has got like death written all over their face.
Yeah, I think it's a tricky one because at the end of the day, what people forget is they're there to do a job as well. Yes, they're coming to entertain hundreds of thousands of fans, but at the same time, they've got a job to do and they want to do the best they can. So it's not even so much if they've had a good result or not, but if they've just had a really busy day and they've been falling behind a little bit with different run plans and data and stuff, they've got a lot on their mind. So you've got to respect that. And likewise, when I'm filming, I always put the driver and all the engineers first so I don't get in their way. But you know what? All the drivers that I do get to interview are so lovely. They massively support what I do, and you know what, it's nice because it helps them as well as me. Motorsport's all about getting your name out there, sponsors, any opportunity they can to stand in front of a camera and a microphone is great. So it's best of both worlds, it helps both of us.
Wonderful. If you're listening across the Waveney Valley and you've just tuned in, I'm talking to Louis Hedge, local motorsports journalist. Louis is 18 and got himself into the profession at the young age of 14 during lockdown when he finally decided he was going to focus on that as a potential career, and got various motorsport drivers to give him interviews. He now runs his own channel, which is Hedgeworks Motorsports. The YouTube channel. You can find interviews and stuff from Louis Hedges on there. So, Louis, now we've got to 18. You've left school. You're now at university. Describe to the listeners what course you have now embarked on.
So I'm now I've just finished my first year, so I'm on a lovely long summer holidays back here in Norfolk. But yeah, I started at University of Derby back in September studying specialist sports journalism, which if anyone's looking to do something like me, whether it's football, basketball, rugby, any sport that you cover, it's a great course. So yeah, big mention to them. And you can really mould the course around what you want to do. Like I said, no matter what sport you're doing. So I've got mates that do rugby, football, women's football, and like you said, you mould it around you. So I get the really good classroom kind of teaching during the week. Getting tips from like lecturers who they've all got experience in the industry, whether they've, lots of them have done different things like the Olympics, boxing, all sorts. And then at the weekends, I'll then go to Donington, which is obviously local to Derby, and then go and interview there on the weekend, kind of putting what I've learned in the classroom into practice at the weekend at the circuit, which I think it's a perfect kind of balance,
Terrific. So will you, is there stuff that happens over the summer while you're on the break that you can go and invest some experience in?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they call it a summer holidays, but it's not too much of a break from motorsport because this is the main part of the year where it's in full swing. We shut down over the Christmas period and when it's cold and snowy, but from sort of April to October, it's in full swing. So yeah, obviously being back here, having Snetterton so locally is perfect. I think first 2 weekends on the bounce I got back for the summer holidays, I was there interviewing.
Hey.
So, I love it. And I'd like to be busy. If we weren't, I'd be concerned. So, yeah, plenty of events coming up. I've got something like 8 new interviews coming out later today from the weekend at Snetterton.
Wonderful.
So people can be looking forward to them. And there's plenty more to look forward to throughout the summer, which should be good.
Fantastic. Louis Hedges, it's very apparent from talking to you only for approximately 10 minutes what passion you have for what you do and what incredible energy and drive you have. It's just wonderful to be sitting opposite you. Even I don't mean to be patronising, but 18 is a young age to be just jumping in and getting on with a career like that. And I fully respect and really admire what you've been doing. Tell me, as your parting shot, what would your ideal interviewee be? Who would it be? Who have you got your eye on?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I'm really lucky because I got to interview a couple of times a guy called Andrew Jordan, who was my favourite British touring car driver growing up, and he was a real idol of mine. So I guess he would have been my original say. I'd possibly say Jenson Button, actually, because he obviously a Formula 1 driver, Formula 1 world champion. I watched him growing up, and sort of one of my earliest memories sort of seeing him race. So I'd say him, to be fair. I think he'd be right up there. I reckon.
Well, I wish you all the luck, Louis. And Jensen, if you're listening, he's here and he's going to do you a lot of favours. You'll get him while he's on the rise. Louis, thank you very much for coming in to talk to us today. If you're out there listening, Hedgeworks Motorsports or YouTube is the place to be to catch Louis and his work and a whole load of motorsports drivers.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure. Best of luck with everything that you do.
Cheers.